time for another book review. And this time I'm going to do a book by Zamil Akhtar, which is Lightblade, which I read recently as part of India Accords. Come back after the break. Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris and I'm going to talk about Lightblade. I'll do it in my usual style, which isn't all that usual since I've only done a couple of these, but I'm going to talk about the premise of the book, the world that it's built in, the characters that we've got, and then the strengths and things that maybe I think could be improved before ending on a spoiler section, because obviously you're going to read the book after you see this and then you'll want to come back and talk about it. Okay, so Lightblade, what is Lightblade about? Lightblade is about a young man called Josh, and Josh works in what seems to be a pretty inhospitable labour camp. Gets up in the morning, goes to work, works, sweats hard, doesn't for not much food, not much control over his life, and he comes home and he sleeps. And it's only when he sleeps that this workforce get any respite, because they have what are called dreamstones. And dreamstones are things that are there to aid their sleep and to concentrate their sleep in their dreams. So while their life sucks on the outside in the working world, in their dream world they can be whatever they want. Now, what most people usually have is some sort of companion in this world, so they have their dream partner. But at the very start of the book, Josh has decided to swap this out for a training program to make him an expert fighter and warrior. And in 3 days, the Emperor is going to come to his factory and he is going to murder him. Except Josh has no skills whatsoever in terms of fighting and in terms of what is being called to using a light blade. Now, to get a light blade, you need another type of stone in order to make you be able to wield or build a light blade. These are problems that he's not concerned with right now, because it doesn't matter if he has one, he doesn't know how to use it. 3 days to become an expert fighter doesn't seem an awful lot of time, and it's not, except time in the dream world goes at a different pace. For every hour that you spend dreaming is a full day in the dream world. So actually, if he gets 3 full days sleep, that's nearly a month of which to learn some skills, enough to be able to assassinate somebody. So all he would really have to do is get a combat stone, a red stone. Now when he gets into the program, he goes into the fighting program, and what he finds is his trainer seems to be a bit more than just a training program. He develops a connection with this person, which is maybe not surprising considering this is an adapted companion avatar, for want of a better word. But everything's just not quite as he expected it, both in terms of his ability to fight, in terms of the ability to channel light. To say any more actually is going to ruin some of the enjoyment out of this. But suffice to say that this is a story where the stakes and what you think is happening constantly shift on you. They constantly are moving. You never really know what the end goal is going to be, because every time you think you know what the end goal is going to be, where the character's striving to, something happens and it switches it around on you, which is incredibly fun. It's a very turny, twisty type story, but all within the context of being consistent with the world that Zamil has built. When we're talking about the world, what are we really talking about? What is in this world? The world is not unlike ours. It sort of seems to be somewhat Middle Easterny in its origin. The big idea that's in the world built around light is that you use light in a variety of ways. So combat and healing and etc. And all of the skills that you may have can all be gotten by using light in different ways. So you have your colour of the rainbow. So your red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. I remember my Roy Gibiv from school. Get in. Each one of those spectrums of light has a use. So one end, the red, as I've kind of talked about before, is for combat. So red being for combat means that the other end of it, the purple or the violet light, is used for the opposite of combat, which would be, you're right, it's healing. And in the middle, we have use of these other colours in other different ways. So for working machinery and working with, as part of Josh's job, is green light. So he would have a green stone carried on him, uses a green stone to channel that green light and being able to operate machinery. And what he's actually doing as a job is building and helping build towards a war machine. So Josh is conflicted about this war machine, his place within it, and also about his pretty sorry existence. Now, outside of this, there is an emperor who seems to be all powerful, but he's all-powerful in the world that Josh knows. And suffice to say, again without spoiling too much, is that there's a bigger world at play here, and there's bigger stakes and bigger things happening. Things that you do know about Josh, though, and that he knows about himself, is that he was betrayed by his brother. And the reason that he's in this labour camp is because his brother betrayed the family, and as punishment, the Emperor decided to murder his entire family, and he was spared. He carries this guilt around him like a very heavy weight. But it gives him drive, it gives him purpose, it gives him reason to continue on and want to fight and show that maybe his life is worth something. While he knows that his life is probably forfeit from going to kill the Emperor, at least it will have meaning, and at least it'll have stood for something. And it isn't very long into the story before Josh realises that actually some of the compromises that he has even made up to now go a step further than what even he would have wanted to have done. Characters, well, we've got Josh himself. Josh is a sort of conflicted young man, very forthright in his views, very forthright in what he wants to set out to achieve, and yet he is determined that he will be a grave success in what he wants to do. Along the way he meets a couple of other people, some people he works with, and what's one of the nice things about the book, because you're never sure who anybody is and what their motivations are. In work, because it's so inhospitable, the workers are encouraged to tell tales in each other. The kind of control of the camp is in the workers because they're rewarded ever so slightly with better food, better conditions for touting on somebody or controlling somebody. You can't trust even the person beside you, your so-called friends. And even the world of the dreams is somewhat controlled. Different dreamstones have different capabilities. Like I've just talked about, there's a companion dreamstone, there's a combat dreamstone, there are other ones for just building and existing in entire worlds. And in this way, it's a bit like, if you've read Otherland by Tad Williams, it's that kind of idea. In fact, a lot of people will also say it's very Matrix-like. This idea that you'll plug yourself into another world and learn skills and develop yourself is one that's very strong within the Matrix. And this idea that you're living in a world within a world and that you've control over your own palace and your own place within it is very strong. It's a link that I think a lot of people will make. I think to say this is Matrix-like, selling the ideas and the amount of ideas and the breadth of ideas very short. I think Zamil has taken that central idea, which is not an original idea, let's be honest. In fact, it's a swimming pool of ideas. We meet some other characters. We meet a doctor called Sana later on, and we meet a rather angry lady called Car, who seems to have other abilities that go beyond, just channeling light. And all of that is explored really fully. Even, as you'll see, there's a lovely picture of a dragon. In fact, the cover of this is pretty spectacular, I think you'll agree. There's obviously dragons in this world, and the dragons, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say, exist within the world as like deities or gods. One of the bits that's teased at the start is that dragons can't die, they're kind of immortal, and the only way that a dragon can die is if it tells you exactly how it wants to be killed, or if it is going to be killed. And it's a really lovely premise to be set on, to say that if a dragon appears, it can't be killed. It carries some meaning. And the kind of world that we're set in, this faction based, where you have people that are very religious based, you have people that are very power based, you have people, their ideas and their beliefs tie in very closely to who they are as people. So that's our characters. Now, things that I really like, I've touched on this a couple of times as I've went through, but I just think it's a treasure trove of ideas. It just feels like every couple of minutes you get something else thrown at you that you kind of went, oh, that's cool. That's really nice. The writing style, it's got propulsion to it. It's very aid of telling a story that is constantly shifting out amongst you. I think it drives you on forward and is compelling in that way. I haven't read any other of Zamil's books, so we'll have to get the Gunmetal Gods. It's a very inventive story, and the world building, etc., is just on another scale. Everything's very vivid in here. The idea of the growth of somebody, how they use light and how it channels through the body and their system to produce different outcomes is pretty cool. In fact, what you would call the Matrix training program, which is, where he develops skills, etc., is quite an extended part of the book. And yes, it is about showing what skills that he has available, but it also teaches you how the world works and how the magic, even though it's magic science, works in that context. It's really interesting in that regard, and something that I don't think you'll ever be bored with the whole way through it. I mean, we have a book that's now on, just short of 500 pages. While you could say it's a chunky book, It's not a hard read at all. As usual for this kind of story, given that I've said there's great propulsion going through it, you can imagine the last 150 pages you just kind of eat and swallow up. So lots to like in here. The characters are interesting enough. I think Josh is kind of more of this blank slate character. You can see that his motivations are very clear, what kind of makes him, but he hasn't had much of a life as Josh. You get to project yourself into who he is and what he is quite a lot because he has a lot of welled-up anger for sure, but he's also doesn't know how to direct it. That makes him easily manipulated in some ways, but it also makes him somebody that you can kind of grasp on and say, well, I think you should do this, Josh. And you get to see as a reader whether that plays out or it doesn't. But of course, we don't know the whole story as the reader, and it keeps on getting thrown at us in little bits, which is really interesting. Things that it could be improved upon. I mean, it could definitely be written in a more florid style, in a lyrical style that maybe I like to read more. But I think there's horses for courses. I think if it was written in that way, this book would be 100 pages long. It's not to say that the prose isn't good, because obviously the descriptive writing is excellent in it, to be able to build the world as well as that. It doesn't have that kind of florid style, kind of that Guy Gabriel Kay or Robin Hobb kind of style, but not every book needs that. And in fact, if it had been that, I think I'd been frustrated, because it's a book that's about propulsion and propelling you forward and turning the page and getting to the end of the story to see what else is happening with it. So aside from that, the only other things question a little bit is this light system. Obviously we have red on one side but violet on the other one. Those are the opposite ends of the scale, but how things fit in the middle isn't as satisfying for me, to be honest. That green is the one for operating machinery. I think at that stage, you do have to invent your own world. You do have to invent your own ideas, and we have only got shown a couple of the colours that are in here. So obviously developing forward, there's obviously more things that you can do with the world and the light system and the magic system that you've created. To sum it up, I think Lightblade's a really engaging read, something that's really exciting to read, something that is full of inventiveness, full of twists and turns. And if you're looking for something that's very much adventure based, that's very much about the chosen one hero, sort of, then Lightblade is a book for you. And if you do end up reading it and you do end up getting involved in it, let me know, because I'm certainly going to jump into Gunmetal Gods very soon, because I do very much like Zamil's style of storytelling, his style of propelling me through a world, and his ideas in terms of world building. Time for a spoiler section. Where to start with this? There's so much happens in this book. It is unreal. From his early beginnings to where he ends up at the end is almost night and day. You do get the sense that Josh is special, that there's more to his story. There's a reason that he wasn't killed along with the rest of his family, that he has some part to play, a bigger part to play in this world. And yet I think it's a bit convenient the way that it all ties together around him. I do think the relationship to the overall baddie, to him directly, kind of doesn't make sense, because they were going to kill him, they weren't going to kill him, they were going to... I wasn't quite sure about that. The Elam core relationship, I think, is dynamic, is really interesting, because obviously they're in constant combat. They will go to any length for each other. There's a bigger story to behold that actually extends beyond their own world and their own problems, which I think is kind of fascinating. The relationship with Sienna, I mean, it's a non-romantic relationship, or is it? It's one of those things that it's alluded to in that jokey way that's his drive to go and do it. But there's obviously a connection there that Josh has to Sienna. Now, it's almost like a mother or an aunt, not even so much a mother, but an aunt or a sister relationship, where she will enable him. She will be there to heal him. She will be there to keep him right, and be there to support him, as was evidenced through the blue light, use of blue light later on. Main concern actually is where it goes after this, because a lot of the world has been dealt out so far, and I wonder whether it's going to be another two big series, because it doesn't seem like you could sustain the amount of twists and turns and changes and characters that are needed, and development of characters, for much further than another book. But again, it goes so many different places that it's hard to think that Zamil couldn't just pull another couple of rabbits out of the hat and get you to think, oh, this is what's actually happening here, and this is what's going to happen. So that's my review of Lightblade. I think it's pretty cool, like I say. If you've read Lightblade, let me know what your own thoughts are about it. It's like I say, I usually leave this about a week or so when I finish to record it, so I don't have any recency bias, but it means some of the details kind of slip out of the head a little bit, especially when I'm preparing a non-spoiler review first. But yeah, converse with me down in the comments and let me know. And if you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. And I'll take care, and I'll speak to you again soon. All the best.